All right, let's dive into a world that might seem familiar, with all the buzzing and flitting about.
Right.
But today we're going beyond that. We're talking insects, but we're going deep, deep into their brains,
Fascinating stuff.
exploring how they learn and adapt. Like, forget those old cartoons where insects are just mindless robots, right?
Yeah.
Today we're going to uncover how sophisticated their learning abilities really are.
It is amazing. For a long time, even scientists, we kind of underestimated insects.
Yeah.
We thought of them as, pretty simple creatures driven by instinct. But actually, research is showing us a whole new side to their behavior.
It's like we're revealing like a hidden intelligence.
Yeah.
So to get started, what are some basic things that we need to know about how insects learn?
Well, think about it this way. Like, every creature inherits certain traits.
Right.
Through their genes, right? It's like their basic survival toolkit.
Yeah.
But the world's always changing, so relying just on instinct can only take you so far. Like, imagine a fly, right, emerging from its pupa.
Okay.
It's entering a whole new world, and it's got all kinds of challenges. Its instincts can only take it so far.
So just like us, they need to be able to learn and adapt
Yeah.
to new situations
Exactly.
to thrive.
It's like you've got this set of instructions,
Right.
but sometimes you got to improvise. And one of the most important skills for survival is recognizing a mate
Right, of the same species.
of the same species. Exactly.
Well, makes sense. But how do insects learn to do that?
Yeah.
Because, they all look so similar.
Yeah. Well, let's look at a specific type of fruit fly.
Okay.
This one's called Drosophila polystorum.
Okay.
And actually, it's a group of 6. They're called semi-species.
Okay.
And they look almost identical.
Oh, wow.
But they prefer to mate within their own group. And their ability to discriminate is influenced by their early exposure.
Okay.
So flies that are raised in a mixed group, where they encounter different semi-species, become much better at recognizing their own kind.
Right.
But those that are raised in isolation,
No.
they actually struggle with this task.
So their early, social life actually shapes their ability to find the right mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you wonder if our social interactions would be different if we had, limited social exposure early on.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a great point.
it highlights how experience really shapes behavior, even in creatures that we think of as simple.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about another type of fruit fly,
Yeah.
Drosophila melanogaster.
Yeah, the common fruit fly.
Yeah, the common one,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They also show some pretty cool learning patterns,
Right.
especially when it comes to courtship.
Yeah. So, we think about courtship. We think it's just, instinctual.
Right, like they're just hardwired to do it.
Yeah.
But you're saying there's learning involved.
Yeah. So it turns out that immature male fruit flies actually produce pheromones similar to female flies.
Oh, that's interesting. So young males attract other males.
And they do.
What's the point of that?
Yeah. Well, you can think about it as a form of practice.
Oh, right.
So the mature males respond to these pheromones by courting the young males. The whole courtship song
Huh?
and the wing vibrations. And the research shows that exposure to this song during a certain developmental window actually helps the young males become better at courting when they mature.
So they're learning the ropes
Yeah.
by watching, or I guess hearing.
By hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, by hearing
Exactly.
the older males.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So it's not just limited to fruit flies. We see these critical periods
Yeah.
in other species as well, like birds
Shade.
learning their songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So exposure to specific experiences
Right.
during these critical times can have a lasting impact on their behavior. So we've got flies learning to recognize mates, even picking up courtship cues.
Right.
What other types of learning are we seeing?
So fruit flies also show this phenomenon called courtship depression.
Courtship depression. Okay,
Yeah.
what is that?
So imagine male fruit fly, right? He's putting all this effort into courting a female,
Right.
only to be rejected
Right.
because she's already mated.
Ouch.
Not only is he rejected,
Yeah.
but she releases these signals, the mated female, that actually make him less likely to court any female for a while.
Oh, wow. Talk about a tough break.
I know, right?
It's like flies can get their heart broken too,
In a way, yeah.
but I guess there's probably a practical reason for that.
There is. So courtship takes a lot of energy.
Right.
So if he keeps getting rejected, especially in a dense population,
Yeah.
it's actually more efficient to conserve his energy
Okay.
and try again later when his chances might be better.
So it's like a built-in system to prevent them from wasting energy.
Exactly, yeah.
on pursuits that aren't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, fruitless pursuits.
So how does that work, this courtship depression?
Yeah, so it's actually driven by changes in the brain.
Okay.
So the male fly detects these signals from the mated female through his maxillary palps.
Is what?
Maxillary palps.
Okay.
They're these sensory organs near his mouth.
Okay.
And these signals actually trigger, like, a cascade of molecular events in his brain, which lead to these changes in his behavior.
So these tiny little flies are experiencing something like heartbreak.
Yeah, in a way.
And it's all because of these molecular changes in their brains.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Pretty amazing.
What about other insects? Do we see this kind of complexity in other species' brains?
Absolutely. So let's switch gears again.
Okay.
Talk about honeybees.
Okay.
Which are, like, the A+ students of the insect world, especially when it comes to learning and memory.
Okay, what makes them so good at it?
They're really good at remembering things that are associated with rewards.
Rewards, like what?
Think sweet. Sugar water.
Okay.
Honeybees are all about, like, finding those best sources of nectar, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And they learn to associate specific odors with these sugary rewards.
Okay, so instead of avoiding, electric shocks like we talked about last time,
Yeah.
they're motivated by something a little more appealing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense for a creature whose whole life revolves around, finding nectar.
Right, exactly.
But how do we know that they actually learn to associate smells with rewards?
So there's this classic experiment. It demonstrates this beautifully.
Okay.
So you present a honeybee with a certain odor,
Okay.
and then immediately you give it a little taste of sugar water.
Okay.
You repeat that a few times, and guess what? The bee learns to extend its proboscis, that's its tongue,
Okay.
in anticipation of the reward whenever it encounters that odor again.
So they're basically learning, like, which floral scents signal a good meal.
It's exactly, yeah.
It's like Pavlov's dogs,
Yeah, it is.
but with bees and flowers. And this is crucial for their survival as pollinators, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a really, really brilliant adaptation.
Yeah, it is.
Allows them to efficiently locate and remember where the good stuff is.
Yeah, and here's a key point. The order of events is really important.
Okay.
The odor has to come before the reward
Okay.
for the bee to make that connection.
So it's about predicting what's going to happen next.
Yes, yes.
Like if I smell this, then I'm going to get a sweet treat.
Exactly. The odor becomes meaningful because it predicts that reward. It's not just reacting. It's like learning to anticipate,
Right.
making decisions based on experiences.
I'm starting to see a theme here. Like both the fruit flies and the honeybees are learning to predict what will happen next
Yeah.
based on what they've encountered.
Yeah.
It's like they're building like a model of their world in their little brains.
Yeah. That's a fantastic insight, yeah.
So let's talk about that. What's going on in those little brains? How are they doing all this?
Well, with honeybees, for example, the antennal lobes,
Okay.
which is where they process smell,
Right.
play a big role in this odor reward learning.
So they smell the flower and the information goes to their brain.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Yeah, so from there it travels to other brain regions like the lateral protocerebrum,
A what? Okay.
and the mushroom bodies.
Mushroom bodies. I feel like I've heard of those before.
Yeah.
Are they important?
Yeah, they're very important for learning and memory, yeah.
What do they do?
So they're especially important for, like, distinguishing between different odors,
Okay.
helping the bee remember which floral scent leads to the best nectar. Like, think of them as the bee's internal library
Okay.
of scents and their associated rewards.
So it's not just remembering like a generic flower smell. It's actually creating detailed associations
Exactly.
between particular scents.
Yeah, specific ones.
And their rewards. Pretty impressive.
It is. It is. And there's another key player in this system. It's called the VUM neuron.
The VUM neuron.
Yeah.
What's so special about that?
It's like the conductor of the bee's reward orchestra.
Okay.
It's this large neuron with connections throughout the brain, and its activity is directly linked to that sugar reward.
So when the bee gets that sweet taste,
Yeah.
this neuron fires up.
It does.
It's basically like signaling, hey, this is good, remember this.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the really cool part. Researchers have shown that if you directly stimulate that VUM neuron, it can actually replace the sugar reward.
Wait, so you can trick the bee into thinking it got sugar?
You can.
Just by activating this one neuron?
Exactly.
So the bee will learn to associate an odor with VUM neuron stimulation, just as if it had actually received the sugar.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this neuron is like the key to the whole learning process.
It is.
It's reinforcing that connection between the odor and the reward, making the bee more likely to seek out that odor again.
Yeah.
So we've got the odor coming in, the VUM neuron firing, the connections being made in the mushroom bodies. How does all that translate into long-term memory?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it leads us to the concept of memory consolidation.
Okay.
It turns out the way a bee is trained has a big impact on how long it remembers something.
So it's not just about the bee's brain, it's about how it learns.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Think about it like studying for an exam.
Okay.
If you cram everything the night before, you might pass the test,
Right.
but you probably won't remember it very long.
Right, exactly.
But if you space out your study sessions,
yeah,
that's what really helps the information stick.
that makes sense. So how does that apply to bees?
So researchers have found that this interval training,
Yeah.
where the bee experiences the odor and the reward, but with some time in between,
Okay.
actually leads to much better memory retention.
So it's like giving the bee's brain time to process
Exactly, yeah.
and store the information.
Yeah, yeah. And here's where things get really interesting on a molecular level.
Okay.
Interval training triggers a cascade of events that lead to changes in gene expression.
Wait, hold on. Gene expression. You're saying that genes are being turned on or off in the bee's brain because of learning.
You got it?
That's wild.
Perhaps the key players here is a protein called CREB.
CREB.
Yeah. It acts like a switch, basically,
Okay.
telling certain genes to produce more of their protein.
So learning is actually changing what's happening inside the bee's cells
Yeah.
at the level of their DNA.
Yeah, it is.
That's amazing.
It is. And then these newly made proteins help to stabilize the changes that are happening at synapses,
Okay.
those connections between neurons.
Right.
And this stabilization is actually what helps to form long-term memories.
Okay, so we've gone from sniffing a flower to changes in the bee's genes.
We have.
That's a pretty incredible chain reaction.
It is.
But is all this learning just about these simple associations between odors and rewards?
It's a great question.
Or can honeybees learn more complex things?
Oh, you have no idea.
Okay, tell me more.
Honeybees are so much more than just these little odor associating machines. They can actually learn, much more complex things, like recognizing visual patterns.
Okay.
Even abstract concepts.
Abstract concepts, like what?
Like sameness and difference.
Wow, you're telling me bees can understand abstract concepts?
They can.
My mind is officially blown.
Yeah, they're capable of much more than we give them credit for.
That is amazing.
But hold on.
Okay.
It gets even more incredible. They can also learn spatial maps.
Spatial maps.
Yeah.
Like mental maps.
Mental maps, yeah.
Of their surroundings.
Yeah, so they can remember the locations of food sources,
Okay.
landmarks, and even find, novel shortcuts.
Really?
Yeah. So in one experiment, they trained bees to visit different feeders
Okay.
and then released them from a totally new location. And they were able to fly directly back to the hive,
Wow.
even though they'd never taken that route before.
So they're not just memorizing a set path, they're understanding the spatial relationships between different locations.
You got it.
That's incredible.
It is.
What do you call that?
It's called episodic memory. And it's considered a pretty high-level cognitive function. It's something we usually associate with mammals.
Right.
But here we have these bees doing it.
I'm officially in awe of honeybees now. They're like tiny little geniuses.
They are.
But what about other insects?
Yeah.
Are there other examples of this complex learning?
So honeybees are a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
But there are other insects that have surprised us. Let's talk about cockroaches for a minute.
Cockroaches? Really?
I know, not as glamorous as honeybees.
Right.
But they're actually really great models for studying, the physiology of learning.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What can roaches teach us about brains?
So cockroaches, they show something called place learning, meaning they can learn the location of a hidden target based on landmarks.
So even though they're not, as flashy as bees, they can still learn to navigate their surroundings.
That's right. And what's really cool is that researchers have been able to study the neural activity in their brains while they're learning.
So we can actually see what's happening in a cockroach's brain as it's figuring things out.
In a way, yes. They found neurons in the cockroach's mushroom bodies
Okay.
that respond to, different sensory inputs like vision and touch, suggesting that these neurons are integrating information from different sources.
Yeah, which makes sense. You're trying to learn the layout of a place. You've got to use all your senses.
Exactly. And they found other neurons that seem to actually predict specific movements.
Really?
Yeah, turning left or right. So these findings are giving us clues about the potential neural basis of, like, place learning and spatial memory.
That's incredible. We're talking about decoding the neural code of memory and navigation in a cockroach.
We are, yeah.
Who knew?
It really is amazing. It's a testament to, like, the complexity and adaptability of even what we think of as simple brains.
I have to admit, I'm feeling a little humbled right now. We started with flies learning to recognize mates, and now we're talking about roaches navigating mazes. The insect world is full of these hidden talents.
It is, yeah.
So much more than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
And it makes you wonder, like, what other secrets are out there just waiting to be discovered in this incredible world of insect learning?
There's so much we don't know. You know, how they perceive the world, how they learn, how those brains work.
It's really fascinating. I feel like we need a whole series of deep dives just to cover like the basics of insect intelligence.
I agree.
But for now, let's take a little step back from the world of bees and roaches.
Okay.
And think about what all this means for us.
Yeah.
You know, we started talking about how insects learn.
Right.
But I'm starting to see these connections to our own learning and cognitive abilities.
Absolutely.
Like the importance of experience, repetition, even forgetting.
Right, right.
Do you see those parallels too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most powerful messages here. Like, studying insect learning isn't just about understanding bugs.
Right.
It's about understanding the very nature of learning itself.
It's like looking at a simplified model of our own brains.
Yeah.
You know, a way to see these basic principles in action.
That's a great way to put it.
So by studying how insects learn, we can gain insights into the fundamental mechanisms that underlie all learning.
Yeah.
Including our own.
Absolutely.
It gives a whole new meaning to that old saying, there's a lot we can learn from a fly.
It does.
So they might be small.
Yeah.
But they're teaching us some pretty big lessons about brains and learning.
They are.
This has been an incredible journey into the insect mind.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. And we've still got more ground to cover.
We do.
So let's dive back in and explore some final thoughts on this amazing world of insect intelligence.
Let's do it. Okay, so we've talked about how insects learn all this incredible stuff, from how to pick out a mate to how to get around in some pretty complex environments.
Right.
But you know, it makes me wonder, if a bee with a brain the size of a pinhead, right, can build a mental map of its whole foraging area, how come I walk into a room sometimes and forget why I went there?
Yeah, no, it's a question a lot of us ask, right?
Right.
We look at these amazing feats of insect memory and feel kind of bad about our own forgetfulness.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's wrong with my memory?
Right.
Or are our brains just wired differently?
Well, it's good to keep in mind that even honeybees, you know, they don't have perfect memories.
Right.
They make mistakes. They forget stuff just like any other animal.
So you're saying even the super smart honeybees have their off days?
Yeah, absolutely. And then when it comes to human brains, you know, we're talking about a whole other level of complexity. Like, our brains are constantly bombarded with information. We have to filter it, decide what's important, and sometimes, you know, things slip through the cracks.
So it's not like a sign of a bad memory. It's just our brains trying to manage all this stuff coming at us.
Exactly. And actually forgetting can be a good thing. How so?
Well, we don't need to remember every single detail of our lives, right?
True.
It can be really helpful to let go of stuff that's just not relevant anymore.
Okay, that's a good point. I bet there's plenty of things I'm better off forgetting.
Right.
But is there anything we can learn from insects about, like, improving our memory? Can those tiny brains teach us how to remember things better?
That's a great question, and it's something that researchers are really looking into. Remember how we talked about interval training with the honeybees?
Yeah.
Well, there's a learning technique called spaced repetition, and it's based on that same principle.
Spaced repetition. Yeah, I think I've heard of that. It's the idea of, like, reviewing information, but you do it at longer and longer intervals.
Right. To help you remember it better.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, if you're trying to learn a new language, you should review those vocabulary words regularly.
Yeah.
But space out those review sessions over time.
Right.
And it turns out to be a very effective strategy for humans, too.
Mm.
So we're basically mimicking what leads to long-term memory in bees.
So next time I'm trying to, like, really memorize something, I should think like a bee.
Yeah,
space out my practice sessions.
exactly.
But I have to say, it's still amazing to me all the different things that insects can learn. We've talked about smells, visual patterns, even abstract concepts.
I know.
Is there anything they can't learn?
That's a really tough question. You know there's always more to learn. But one thing that impresses scientists is how flexible insect learning is. They're constantly updating their knowledge and their behavior based on new experiences.
So they're not just stuck in their routines, they're actually learning and evolving all the time.
That's right.
I think that's a big takeaway from all this. Insects may be small, but they're capable of some really amazing things.
They are, yeah.
It makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in the insect world, waiting for us to find them.
Yeah, there's still so much we don't know about their brains, how they learn, how they experience the world.
Makes you feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Right.
Well, for now, let's take a step back from bees and cockroaches.
Okay.
Think about what it all means for us humans.
Yeah.
You know, we started this whole thing talking about how insects learn, but I'm seeing all these connections to our own learning and our own cognitive abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. We might not have compound eyes and antennae, but we share some basic principles of learning and memory.
Like the importance of experience, repetition, even forgetting.
Exactly.
So it's not just about understanding bugs, it's about understanding learning itself.
That's it, yeah.
It's like we're looking at a simpler version of our own brains, and we can see how these basic principles work.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
So by studying how insects learn, we can actually learn more about how we learn.
Absolutely.
It's like there's a lot we can learn from a fly. Takes on a whole new meaning.
It does.
They may be small, but they've got some pretty big lessons to teach us about brains and learning.
They do.
This has been an amazing journey.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. And we've still got more to cover.
We do.
So let's get back to it and explore some final thoughts about this whole amazing world of insect intelligence.
Let's do it. We're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of insect learning.
It's been pretty amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we've explored everything from fruit flies and how they learn courtship
Right.
to honeybees navigating, like using those mental maps.
And who could forget the cockroaches learning those mazes? I never thought I'd be so fascinated by cockroaches.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
So as we wrap up, what are some of the key things you want our listeners to take away? What's a big picture message about insect learning?
I think the most important thing is that we got to rethink how we see insects. You know, for too long, we've kind of underestimated their intelligence. We thought they were just simple, you know, like robots almost.
Right, just responding to stimuli.
Yeah. But as we've seen, they can do so much more than that. They learn from their experiences, they
Yeah.
change their behavior,
Right.
and they make decisions based on what they've learned.
Exactly. And they're doing all that with brains that are totally different from ours, but still share these fundamental principles of learning.
Exactly.
It's like we're getting a glimpse into, like, the basic building blocks of intelligence.
Yeah, simplified version.
So by studying insect learning, we're not just learning about bugs, we're learning about learning itself.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And like we've been saying, there's still so much we don't know.
So much.
This whole field is constantly evolving. There's always new discoveries being made.
Right.
I can't wait to see what they find out next.
Me too.
But for now, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. If creatures with brains as tiny as a pinhead can do these incredible things, learn, remember, navigate, what does that tell us about the potential of our own brains?
That's a great question. And I hope it inspires people to, like, keep exploring, keep that sense of wonder.
Yeah.
You know, the more we learn about life on Earth,
Right.
even the smallest creatures, the more we realize how much there is to discover.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into insect learning. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions,
Right.
and never underestimate the power of a tiny